kind of housekeeping with you all, and welcome you all to this session, which is going to be, I think, extremely informative. How to run and fund a creative business, the key. So I think you're going to hear lots of kind of top tips. And carry on. Okay. Sorry, Lord, can you see her there? And we're doing this live, so there's going to be a bit of like sort of frightened little UK artist staff because we haven't been out of our spare rooms for a while. So the housekeeping is that we're going to ask all of our guests and participant speakers even to describe themselves, and that will include myself. I am a white woman. I am in my 50s. I have brown hair. I'm wearing glasses, and I'm sat at a desk at the LCB Depot with a very beautiful embroidery of kind of birds and landscapes behind me, and I'm wearing a black top. The session is being recorded. It's being recorded from now, and it will be on the UK NA website and our YouTube and our partners' kind of websites as well. So do share or point people in the direction if you felt the session was useful. Please, you're welcome to have your cameras on, but also we quite understand if you want your cameras off, but please keep your microphones off unless you're invited to ask a question. Questions will be at the end of every session, and feel free to pop them in the chat as well. Myself or Laura will be monitoring that and asking them as we go along. Live subtitles are available and should be being seen now on your screen, or turn on your live transcription by clicking CC. I think we've done that, haven't we, Laura? Yes, we have. So that's all good. So what I'm going to do is we're going to have a live action movie kind of thing now. I'm going to introduce from the other side of the room. You're not going to have to literally come around here. Yeah. Okay. Chris Slow, who's the Creative Learning Officer here at LCB Depot, who are very, very kindly hosting us today. So thank you. Just to talk a bit more about what LCB does and Leicester and all such fantastic things. So I'm going to move out of the way and give some room to Chris to have a little chat.
Hi. Hope you are well. I'm Creative Learning Officer at LCB. Also kind of look after a bit of the programme here, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But first I wanted to introduce LCB Depot. So it's Leicester Creative Business Depot. And what that means is that we are mainly a workspace. We've got lots and lots of different businesses here. We also have workspaces round the corner at Maker's Yard and above the Phoenix Cinema. And all in all, it's about 122 creative companies based locally, just near each other. That includes, as well as artists, there's architects, there's ceramicists, there's filmmakers, digital designers, event organisers, publishers, animators, fashion designers, all sorts of different people, and our remit is purely creative. So as long as it kind of fits in with the kind of up-to-date list of what is a creative business, then we're sort of here to help. We also have a great space at LCB. So there's two buildings, and in between we've got a big courtyard that we used to have lots of events in. So we've got a street food night called Last Friday. We had the first one at the end of the month in April, since lockdown lifted a little bit. And that was great, but obviously small because all the restrictions still in place. But previously, in the before times, we were getting 1,000 people down. And we had 7 street food vendors and loads of events and music and comedy and performance, and also activities related to our programme here. So the programme, I've mentioned it a couple of times, that's kind of my sort of remit. Basically, we've given, through 9 months of the year, we've split up different types of creativity into different groups. And then we've got that 3 weeks to a month allocated to focusing on those different areas. So we've got a season dedicated to graphic design. We've got a season dedicated to architecture. We've got a season dedicated to craft, which is on at the moment. And we've got a season dedicated to fashion, as well as visual art. And am I missing anything else off? Probably sound arts coming next month. Should be interesting. So how those work is that we invite new artists, existing artists from the area, but from across the country, to come together to share their work and share their experience and host events and discussions and talks, to try and kind of like facilitate sort of new connections, because that's something that that we're really keen on doing, is building communities within the different types of sort of creativity that are out there. And so that's, I think, a really important part of support that we just wanted to highlight. The other sort of side of things is opportunities. So we're kind of part of all the different things that are going on in Leicester. So we've kind of got our ears to the ground about what's coming up. So we're quite into sort of directing people off to different opportunities where they're appropriate. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to sort of cover a few of those sort of different areas, and I think that's probably it from me, but hopefully you'll be able to visit in real life in the not too distant future. Shall I sidle over here, Michelle, and then you can...
Yeah, sort of slightly sidle, but come back, because also, just before you go, Chris, could you describe yourself, please, for the audience?
Well, I'm a white male, glasses, beard, 40. Snood thing, which I like to hide behind. And I'm all about kind of creativity and opportunities, and connecting people, and those are my kind of passions, which is really fortunate because that's my job.
That's perfect.
Okay,
thank you so much.
Thanks.
So thank you very much to Chris for that introduction to LCB Depot in Leicester. I know by looking at some of the names in the list that we have some Leicester City takeover artists, which is always gladdens my heart, and lovely to see you here. So a top recommendation to come down here and check out what's going on. So next up, I want to introduce you to Jess Tickle, who's a relationship manager at Arts Council England, and she is going to be talking about kind of project grants and a fund called Developing Your Creative Practice, as well as the work about the Arts Council. So I'd like to introduce Jessica and ask Jessica to describe yourself to the audience, please.
Thank you so much, Michelle, and thanks, Chris. Hi, everybody. I am Jess, and I'm a white woman in my early 40s. In fact, I just turned 40, so I'm still getting used to that. And I have specs on with clear rims and a black fluffy cardigan because it's actually really chilly. I don't think I've worn this since December, but I pulled it out today because it's really chilly. I am also a big fan of LCB Depot. It was my creative home for a number of years, and it was nice to be reminded of what a fabulous place it is just now by Chris. So I definitely recommend you get down to one of their street food Fridays or whatever they're called. So I'm going to share my screen with you now. Just bear with me a moment. Can someone let me know if you can see that?
Yeah, from me, I can see that. Yeah.
Thank you. And I'm just turning my video off while I'm speaking because I just find it distracting to see myself. Yeah. So yes, I'm going to be talking to you about National Lottery project grants, and we'll call those project grants for short, and developing your creative practice. And I think that I'm going to be talking for around 15 to 20 minutes. So let's pace ourselves, and don't worry if you need to dip in and out. We're going to really briefly cover what the programmes can support and our priorities for each fund. We don't have time to cover everything today, so I'm going to start the presentation by really encouraging you, whenever you're applying for Arts Council funding, to read the full guidance on our website before you submit any application. And all you'll get that that's a recurrent theme as we go through the presentation. But I hope that today serves as a really good introduction, and I'm really happy to answer any questions that you might have afterwards. So let's just, next slide, thank you. So I think it's really important that we start by saying that the Arts Council is the arts and cultural development agency for England. Our strategy for the next 10 years is called Let's Create, and we published it last year. And in it, we set out the following vision. By 2030, we want England to be a country in which the creativity of each of us is valued and given the chance to flourish, and where every one of us has access to a remarkable range of high quality cultural experiences. And Let's Create is built around the three outcomes which you can see here: creative people, cultural communities, and a creative and cultural country. And it's really important that when you're applying to the Arts Council, you consider how your proposal is going to help us achieve the outcomes of Let's Create. So do take some time when you've got it to read our strategy. It's on the website, and become familiar with our investment principles, because that's going to govern everything that we do, everything that we invest in and that we fund over the next 10 years. So this is a bit of housekeeping of our own, actually. And this is just to say that all applications, whenever you apply to the Arts Council, you will do so via an online system called Grantium. And there are a number of steps that you need to go through before you submit your application. Step one is to set up your user account, which is really simple. It's just a username and password. Step two, we ask you for a bit more information about yourself, such as, are you an individual or are you representing an organisation? And that's important because some of our funds aren't open to organisations, for instance, developing your creative practice, which we'll talk about later. And then step three, and this is really the reason that this slide is here, is called the validation period. And that can take several days. It's basically where we're checking that you are you and there's only one of you on our system, but it can take a few days. So if you're submitting an application for a deadline, and if this is the first time you've ever been onto Grantium, you need to give yourself that window of a few days for your account to be validated. And then once all that's done, you can take the eligibility questionnaire and start your application. You only ever have to do those first three steps the first time you use Grantium. So if you're reapplying and you already have an account, you won't have to go through that. So onto the more interesting stuff. Project grants. This is our most popular funding stream, and we invest about £100 million a year in national lottery funds in project grants. So thank you to every single person that plays the lottery every week. It's open to both individuals and organisations, and that includes museums and libraries. And you can apply for anything between £1,000 and £100,000. Actually, you can apply for over £100,000, but you need special permission for that. And that's probably a whole separate presentation. Eligible projects can last up to 3 years. And I think it's really good for you to know as applicants that we divide applications into two groups. So small grants of those that are under £15,000, and then those that are over £15,000. And those divisions have different turnaround times in terms of your decisions. So at the moment, for our small project grants under £15,000, the turnaround time is currently 10 weeks or less. And for over £15,000, it's 16 weeks or less. Those are subject to change. It's one of the things that are subject to change. So I do advise you, when you're at the point of putting your application in, that you check the turnaround time on our decisions, because we can't fund anything that takes place before your decision date, what we call retrospective costs. So any activity that you plan needs to come after your decision date. And then you'll see the last point on this slide has an asterisk, and that's actually because this requirement is currently suspended as part of the measures that we put in place to support the sector during the COVID pandemic. So usually we would ask all applicants to show us that they have 10% match funding from other sources. which means that if your project costs £10,000, the Arts Council would be able to fund up to £9,000 of it, but we'd want to be seeing that remaining £1,000 coming from elsewhere. Until August this year, August 2021, that match funding requirement is suspended. Okay. So I think just for clarity, it's worth just going through the disciplines that our funding supports. And those are music, literature, dance, visual arts, theatre, combined arts, and creative and cultural work that takes place in museums and libraries. The kinds of funds, the kind of projects that we fund through the programme is really varied, and it can include gigs and concerts, plays, exhibitions, residencies, research and development. It could be for writing a book or recording a podcast. The list is really endless, but there is also a list of things that aren't eligible for project grant funding, usually things that have no opportunity for audiences to engage, are not eligible for project grants. And I'll talk a little bit more about public engagement in a little while. So I do encourage you to, again, go and look at the guidance and really make sure that the activity that you are applying for is considered eligible activity for project grants. And it's worth just to say how highly competitive project grants is. I've already said that it's our most popular funding stream. And so with that in mind, you should only ever submit an application when you are sure that it's absolutely ready. We're going to talk about that in a little bit more detail, but we want it to be competitive when it comes to the decision-making panel. And it can only ever be competitive if you've got all the information that you need when you hit submit. If you are unsuccessful, you will receive some feedback on your application. Use the feedback that you receive to strengthen and reapply. So, in terms of the application form, what are we asking you for? We are asking you for your basic details, which basically means what are you applying for and how much are you asking for the Arts Council for? And then you will find a range of questions against our 4 criteria, which you can see here: quality, public engagement, finance, and management. When we're asking about quality, we are thinking about how strong and clear your creative idea is and how we, as the funders, can be assured of quality outcomes, both for you and for your audiences or the people that are going to engage with your work. And then that takes us to our next criteria, which is public engagement. Projects that we fund through project grants must reach people in England. And that might be as an audience member or as a participant. It might be online, or it might be as a visitor or a listener or a reader. So when we're asking you about public engagement, we're really saying who's going to engage with this activity, how many people are going to engage with this activity or this work, and how are you going to make sure that you reach them? What mechanisms do you have in place to meet your audience targets, or what partnerships do you have in place to ensure that you're going to meet your audience targets? In the finance section, we are going to ask you to show us all your projected income and expenditure for the project, and to show your workings out, to tell us how you arrived at these figures. Really important to note that projects funded through project grants can't be profit making. So your income and your expenditure need to balance. And in fact, I think the form won't let you progress until they do balance. And then finally, in the management section, we're going to ask you how you're going to make this happen. What are the practical steps that you're going to take? How will you know that your project has been a success? How are you going to evaluate it? We're going to be thinking about whether your plans sound realistic and whether they're achievable. And we're also going to be thinking about what you tell us about your experience and how you demonstrate to us that you are the right individual or the organisation to be delivering this work at this point. And the more money you ask for, the more questions we are going to ask. So for instance, if you ask for over £50,000, we're going to be considering whether your work might have an impact on the wider sector, the wider world in which you're working. If you ask for anything over £15,000, we are going to be thinking about how your work contributes to the creative case for diversity, or how you have considered diversity in your planning and inclusion. Okay, I know we've got a top tip session coming up, so these are just really brief, and the headline top tip is to please always read the guidance. Things change and there's loads of absolutely brilliant resources on the website. It's not all reading, there are films to watch, etc. I haven't been at the Arts Council very long, but they've been really useful for me to get to know the funds as well. Take the quiz that's on the website. There's a quiz to kind of ascertain whether your project is ready, whether you're ready to apply, and there's also a quiz around eligibility. And then a big tip is to follow the prompts. When you start writing your application, you'll find prompts for each question, and I really can't advise you strongly enough to just follow those, because if you respond to each prompt, you'll be sure that you haven't missed out any of the information that we need to assess your application. And you should also know that those are exactly the same prompts that we will be using when we appraise your application. So it's completely transparent. You know exactly what we're looking for. Break down your budgets as much as you can, show us you're working. And if you're paying others or yourself, and we really encourage you to pay yourself for your time on your projects, then show us how you've worked out the fees, and demonstrate to us that they are at least at industry standard. Demonstrating fair pay is really, really important to us. We want a cultural sector in which you can have, you know, long, sustainable careers. So we really want to see that in your budgets. Okay, so that was whistle stop project grants, and now we're going to look at developing your creative practice. I think I've probably got about 5 more minutes on developing your creative practice. We're going to call it DYCP for short. DYCP is about enabling creative practitioners such as yourselves to have the space and the time to take your creative practice to the next level. We are really interested in DYCP in developing in funding extended periods of personal development for creative practitioners. The best DYCP applications are those that focus on developing your creative skills, knowledge, and networks. And that's going to be the recurrent theme of this part of the presentation. So, like project grants, this programme is highly competitive. We've just had round 9, and I think we got about 6,000 applications, of which we were able to support 1,300. So once again, when you're writing your application, make sure it's absolutely ready so that you can put in the best application you can, and it can be assured of being competitive. The grants are between £2,000 and £10,000, and projects can last up to 1 year. So you'll see straight away the difference there with project grants, where there was a high, you could apply for more, and projects could last up to 3 years. This is a smaller amount of funding. It's specifically for individuals, and projects can last up to 1 year. Also, unlike project grants, and I should have said that project grants is a rolling programme, there are no deadlines, you can apply whenever you're ready. DYCP is slightly different. So we open DYCP in rounds, and there are clear deadlines. So round 10 is currently open, and the deadline is just around the corner on the 27th of May. And round 11 will open on the 5th of August, 2021. The decision time for DYCP is 3 months. So actually we'll announce the decisions for round 10 on August the 5th, which is exactly the same day that we open for round 11. And as I've said, it's just for individuals. So organisations aren't eligible for DYCP. And by individuals, we don't just mean artists. It's for anyone with a creative practice. So that might include, you know, sound and lighting engineers, for instance, or curators, producers, choreographers, anyone with a creative practice, with a professional creative practice. And it's focused on your personal creative development. So we are not going to be asking you, as part of your DYCP application, what your plans for public engagement are. we are not going to be asking you how the public benefits from this. My colleague Anita has a really good expression when it comes to this, and she says that DYCP is about you, and nothing but you. And that's worth keeping in mind as you're writing your DYCP application, because it's very easy to start thinking about the wider benefit. But actually, this is your invitation and opportunity to be selfish and just think about your own creative development and the journey that you're going to go on. And why this opportunity and why now? Well, those are the questions that sit at the heart of the application, which we'll look at in a second. So here are some of the things that you might want to apply to DYCP for. You could apply for R&D, to explore your practice and to take risks, to experiment. That might be with new collaborators and partners. You might be building networks for future work. You might want to undertake training and professional development. That can't be statutory education, but other forms of professional training are eligible. We can support travel, and that includes international travel when the world reopens. And we can support plans to make your practice and your career more sustainable. And that might include, as it has done over the past 18 months, especially developing new ways of working, including digitally or bringing your work to audiences in socially distanced ways. So the application form for DYCP is much shorter than the project grants application. It centers around 3 questions, and here they are. Please tell us about yourself and your creative practice. Tell us about the developmental opportunity you want to undertake, what you hope to get out of it, and how you will go about it. And why is this important for your practice at this point? How will this help you create future opportunities? So it's essentially about a development journey taking you from A to B. Question 1 is point A, where are you now? And question 3 is point B, where do you want to be at the end of your DYCP activity? And then the second question is all about that journey. And the strongest DYCP applications are those that evidence a big difference in point A and point B and show convincing and structured plans to get there. You might not know at the point that you write your DYCP application exactly what point B looks like, because we're encouraging you to take time, to take risks and to experiment. And we don't always know where experiments are going to take us, and that's fine. But you should be able to articulate the activities that you are planning to undertake and how you anticipate that they might strengthen your practice in the future. So this isn't an exhaustive list by any means, but these are just some of the common pitfalls that you should avoid when thinking about your DYCP application. It's not for the continuation of existing work. So if you're a novelist writing a novel and you apply to DYCP to continue writing your novel, or even just to write a new novel, that probably isn't going to be competitive, because it's not demonstrating a change to your normal practice. It's not showing us how your practice will be developed by that. So it's your opportunity to be ambitious and to show us where the developmental opportunity is within your proposed activity. University and college fees we can't cover, I've already mentioned that, but we can support other kinds of professional training. Just really important, if you're applying for training fees, then you say why this course and why now, and how, again, take it back to you. How is it going to strengthen your practice? Why is this right for you at this point in your practice? Film as an art form in itself, you'll notice that that film wasn't on our list of supported disciplines, which I shared earlier. We do support film if it's used as a vehicle for one of our supported disciplines. So for instance, dance on film, or a gallery bringing their collection to life on film. So film as a vehicle for an art form, yes, but film for film's sake, no, that's outside the remit of the Arts Council. And unfortunately, we can't cover any loss of earnings or retrospective costs. So in exactly the same way as project grants, all of the activity that you apply for, all of the costs incurred need to take place after you get your decision. So a quick recap of what a strong DYCP application looks like. Focus on your experience and what you'll get out of it. Tell us what you'll do as well as why. Include as much detail as you can. Seek out new opportunities and partnerships. Think about what you're going to be able to do better and differently and more of as the result of this development time. And then most importantly on this slide, I think is the last thing that we haven't mentioned, which is that we've already said that the DYCP application is really short. It's 3 questions, but you can include up to 2 attachments. And sometimes those attachments can make all the difference. So really think about what you can attach to your application that's going to reinforce what you're saying in your application. And that might be, and often is, a letter of support from somebody who is familiar with your work in a professional capacity and can vouch for the quality of your work and the quality of the work that is proposed within the application. And we also need to see an example of your work, because this application, this program is all about your work. So that might be a link to a website or a film, or it might be a PDF portfolio of things that you've done in the past. But make use of the attachments. Okay, I'm almost at the end, but it's just really important for you to know that we want the Arts Council funding to be available equally and equitably to everybody. So if you require support to access our funds and to make an application, then there are ways that we can support you to do that. It may be that we can provide our guidance in another format, or you may need support to pay a support worker during the application process, and that support is available to you. If you'd like to know more about the access support options from the Arts Council, then please do email enquiries@artscouncil.org.uk and pop in the subject line access support, and one of my colleagues will come back to you. And then here's just some general pointers for further advice and guidance. Of course, go to the right pages on our website and read the guidance, watch the guidance. There are information sheets on each of our supported disciplines. So I'm a relationship manager for work with children and young people. You'll find a dedicated information sheet for all of our disciplines, and that will give you an idea of the kind of things that we can fund in your artist discipline and the kind of things that we usually wouldn't fund. It will give you an idea of the discipline priorities for the Arts Council as well. If you have any questions, your first point of call should be customer services team, and they'll be able to help you with things like Grantium as well. If you get into a bit of a fiddle with Grantium, they're the best people to talk to. And then there is a team of relationship managers like myself, and we do presentations and come to events like this and support fantastic organisations like UK New Artists. And we can have one-to-one conversations with applicants who are underrepresented within the Arts Council funding at the moment. So bear us in mind. Okay, I think that's it. I will stop sharing and start my video again, and hope you're all still with me.
We're still here. We're still here. That was amazing. Thank you so much. Such an important part of, you know, funding a creative business that the Arts Council gives support for. So we're really grateful for that overview. We've had a couple of questions while you were speaking. I'm very happy to answer them on behalf of the artists, but Millie, you have a couple of questions. Did you want to speak to it? And I see Anna's got a hand up as well. Millie,
yeah, for sure. Yeah, just a couple of questions about match funding. I just wondered whether match funding needs to come from another funder, or if it can be raised yourself through like crowdfunding or other means.
Yeah, absolutely. It can come from another funder. It can be crowdfunded. It can be earned income from tickets. It can be in-kind support as well, so it doesn't always have to be cash. So yeah, absolutely. Just show us, break it down to us where you're expecting your match funding to come from. And also you'll be asked whether it is expected or confirmed at the point that you put the application in. And obviously we'll make a judgment about how feasible the project is, dependent on how much is expected and whether it feels likely that that expected income is likely to come in.
Amazing, thank you. And then I think my other question was about whether for the DYCP, whether a band can apply as part of so say if you're, because I'm a musician and I work mainly with other musicians to make music, so like a cool project could be like doing an improv album together to, you know, some example, but I'm wondering if that was eligible.
Now, I know that obviously I've said organisations aren't eligible, but I believe small groups of individuals are eligible. I'd advise you to go and look at, because I'm not entirely clear on that, and I haven't seen an application myself from a group of individuals. I would advise you to look at the detail around that on the website. But certainly small groups of individuals can apply. I imagine there would need to be one lead individual applicant, which might be you, Millie. But yeah, do look it up.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Millie. And I know we've got a question from Camille. Were you happy to ask it yourself, or would you like me to ask it? I can't quite see on my screen, but if you want to, is Camille there? So Camille, yeah, I will ask it, which is around, Camille is based in Wales. Does the Arts Council Wales application process differ from Arts Council England? And do they have a similar kind of offer to the DYCP, if you know? Jessica.
Really good question, Camille, and I'm sorry that I don't know the answer to that. I don't know about Arts Council Wales funding streams. So I would advise you to go and look it up. And I'm sorry that I can't be more useful on this occasion. I'm going to look it up too.
Yes, as are we. And also we recognise that, you know, it's maybe some other organisations that we need to involve down the line. So we might follow up on that for you. We have hands up from Sophie Shaw and from Anna. So I'm going to quickly ask those two people for their questions, and then we're going to move on to the next speaker. Okay, so I'm going to go in alphabetical order. I'm going to ask Anna to ask your question, please. Hi.
Hello everyone. Thank you very much for the presentation. Was very helpful. And my question is whether we can have two applications. For example, if I have an application for a 3 years project, writing a book, for example, but at the same time, I'm continuing with performing arts project. Can I have this application of 3 years and apply for a project grant, for example?
I believe you can only have one project grants application in at a time. While our next speaker is speaking, I'm going to check the guidance on that, Anna, to make sure that I'm giving you the right advice. But I think it's the case that it's one project grants application at a time. I'll come back to you if that's okay.
Thank you, Anna. And Sophie.
Hello, you mentioned the application criteria for the National Lottery Project Grant. Some funders ask for eligibility and ask whether your organisation requires or meets certain legislation, such as like the Equality Act or the Counter-Terrorism and Security Act. Is this something that Arts Council also asks, or is there not really much of a criteria in terms of eligibility?
Well, there certainly is criteria. I don't know in terms of individual legislation, though. I'd have to check. We ask you for kind of the legal structure of your organisation, things like that. And certainly if you were asking for a higher amount, we'd start to ask for things like audited accounts, but certainly not for your smaller project grants or anything like that. But I'd signpost you to the guidance on that, Sophie. And actually, I think if you were to set up your profile on Grantium, that will be the point at which we ask you the organisational questions that we need. So you would know at that very early point, I think, whether your organisation fitted the eligibility or not.
Brilliant, thank you so much.
Thanks.
That's a very interesting question. I haven't
Yeah.
come across, particularly about the anti-terrorism. God, I'm frightened now because we don't have that. So,
oh well, that answers your question then, Sophie.
No, exactly. Thank you. So, thank you for the questions. If you have anything, hold on to it, and we'll gather them up towards the end. But I'm now going to ask our next speaker, Tina Smith, to join us. Tina used to work with UK Young Artists, so she's very familiar with us as an organisation, and she now freelances supporting organisations and individuals on kind of making good applications. So I'm going to scoot along and I'm going to ask Tina to take the chair and then we'll start the presentation, which is on here. So bear with us, everybody. And don't think you're on share yet, so. Okay, so any thumbs up from anybody who can just make sure we can see Tina's presentation? Yeah, cool, that's wonderful, thank you. So I'll just hand over to Tina, and before Tina starts, can you describe yourself for the audience, Tina?
Okay, absolutely. So I'm a white woman in my late 40s. I'm quite hot at the minute. This room's really hot, so I'm perhaps a bit ruddy and shiny at the moment. I've got sort of medium long hair that's been highlighted, and slightly overweight, so something I want to sort out in future months. There we are, that's me. So so just let you know what I do. So I usually help out with Arts Council funding bids, but obviously Jess has covered all of that, so I'm hopefully going to sort of complement what she's talked about, talk about some different funding opportunities and also those top tips. So having heard Jess's presentation, and I do think it will really complement what she's just said. As Michelle said, I work with individuals and companies to support them through fundraising and development applications. I'm currently working with a dance company in Leicester and a theatre company in Leicester, just part-time, sort of helping them out with their development work. As I go through this presentation, I've got some real examples of where artists and companies have got sort of funding from other sources, and I'll just point them out as we go along. And also there's images on my slides. I hope they're okay to see in terms of, you know, sort of you can view them okay, because I've put some images at the back of kind of projects and artists that I've worked with that I've had been successful with other funds. Just to give you some kind of real examples of successes there. So I'm going to move on to the next slide. That's my contact details if anyone wants any more information. And so my first slide, these slides are kind of like, you can take them away as well. I think you can make them available for people at the end. So there's quite a lot of information in there. So you might like be kind of sort of busy reading that as I'm waffling on. But it's like a bit of an aid memoir as well. So it's just to say really that there's, I've called it sort of variety is the spice of life there. But I think having a mixed funding economy, particularly for a creative organisation, is really useful at the minute. I'm sure the Arts Council would agree that if you're just relying on Arts Council grants all the time and you're not bringing in kind of a diverse range of funders, then, you know, you're not going to be sustainable in the long term. And this kind of words around sustainability and resilience, and it's really important to look at different ways that you can generate income and you can bring that in. So, you know, you've got earning potential, whether that's from your creative product or your skills. So it's about kind of thinking about all the different opportunities that you could have, really. And as creative companies, creative individuals, be creative. You know, there's lots of things over the years that I've worked on, and my colleagues that are here in the room with me today, about trying to generate different sources of income, you know, whether it's kind of art auctions. Yeah, I've worked on galas, fundraising opportunities. There's things like, you know, a craft company did a dinner, and everyone had kind of an individual handmade plate, and they were like auctioned off at the end. So there's loads of ways that you can kind of bring in income. Yeah, you have something to offer that other businesses that perhaps aren't creative also could value. So it's just about being confident with what you've got really to offer. So all of these things are almost kind of talks within themselves. There's lots of stuff we can talk about how you can generate different sources of income. You know, you can think about the local area you're in, how you're contributing to local agendas, and that's where local authority funding or particular kind of strands of funding come in there. You might provide a service that's of a particular public benefit that's not necessarily related to the arts. So, quick example of that is I work with a small all-female Nottingham-based theatre company, and they managed to get some funding from an organisation in Nottingham that kind of funds projects for women. And yeah, so that there's all different kinds of things. So, I mean, obviously there's the usual tried and tested usual suspects, of which the Arts Council is the biggest funder, absolutely. But it's just talking, it's just letting you know really that there's lots of other funders out there, and if you know, be adaptable. And once you've got your idea, or you've got your narrative, and you know what you want, you can adapt it and tweak it and look at different funders. So, you know, there might be a geographical kind of area where certain funding comes from. So it's just really a kind of overview slide there to say there are lots of opportunities. And, you know, some of the big funders as well, things like Esme Fairbairn Foundation, Paul Hamlin Foundation, the Foyle Foundation, you know, these are a kind of, I think on the Arts Council's website, there is a section on other funders. And these are some of the ones where I've worked with companies, and I mean, these are mainly companies they fund, but, you know, we've had quite a lot of successes over the years with these. Another thing that you might want to think about just while I'm on this slide is the way you've set yourself up. So obviously, if you're an individual artist, you know, that's slightly different. But if you're looking to form a company, the way you set up could be beneficial to what kind of funding you're going to go for in the future. So there are some trusts and foundations that will only fund registered charities. So it's just a bit of food for thought there, really, you know, and some of the decisions you make early on can have an impact on the kind of funding you get in the future. So, and that photo there is the Timber Festival that's coming to the National Forest, Leicestershire, Derbyshire in July, and I sit on the board of that, and yeah, that's just one of the photos. Yeah, and just at the bottom of this slide, just to kind of say that in terms of other sources of funding apart from the Arts Council, and you know, it is always good if you've got partnership funding, even though at the moment they're saying you can apply for 100%. If you've got quite a big project, it's really useful to have other sources of funding, because it's also demonstrating that another funder believes in that project and is prepared to invest in you, you know. So and there is a list on the Arts Council's website. But as I've kind of said there, do your own detective work. Just a few really that I've popped up here, ones that I've kind of worked with individual artists on over the years. The Elephants Trust is kind of one that's been around for years, and they kind of give little grants of £2,000 to £5,000 artists, in fine artists, small organisations. If you kind of are looking for a go and see, which I know Developing Your Creative Practice funds as well, but you know, there's other things like the Winston Churchill Memorial Trust. Interesting one as well. I work for Bamboozle Theatre, who kind of work putting on multisensory experiences for learning disabled children, and we wrote a letter to the John Thaw Foundation, and all we had to do was write a letter. Some of the older members of the watching this might remember John Thaw as Inspector Morse, but he classically trained actor, very interested when he died. His wife set up a foundation in his name, and that supports young people to see theatre who normally wouldn't get to see it. So there's loads of things, and all we did there was write a letter, and we got a very nice letter back from Sheila Hancock and £1,000. So, you know, I'm just trying to give you examples really of different ways to kind of fund your project, and being creative. And being responsive as well to opportunities. And on this slide too, I've just popped down Awards for All, which is another lottery source, definitely more about community rather than the arts, but that is another good one for small, maybe groups. It's not individuals, but if what you do is come out of a reason, say that's come from the community, that's quite a useful one to apply for and worth having a look at there. I'm just trying to move my slide on. Oh no, it's.
It'll only use on that now.
You can just use it on this. Sorry, I'm just trying to move the slide on.
Mandy, did you Tina pressing the right button?
Sorry about this, everyone. I should just fill in. What's my next slide?
Is it not? Just frozen. Do you want to take it out and just move it?
Yeah.
Down? Take that out. You should be able to move it manually then. Not quite sure what it's doing there. So I would say, if you see that at the bottom there, Tina.
Yeah.
Just click that.
Ah, thank you. Disaster averted. Right, yeah, sorry, I'm just checking I'm on the right slide. So basically I was just saying there are different opportunities out there, but what I wanted to go through now was the basic kind of principles and reminders for you when you're looking to apply for funding. And I like to call these the 4 Ps. It's just a real easy way of kind of remembering, like, okay, I've got an idea. Am I funding ready? So, and I think this is useful for the Arts Council as well. I often kind of mentor people and they're like, oh, I've got this brilliant idea, but I don't know how to get funding. So I'm just going to kind of whip through these in terms of just kind of the basic principles. And there they are, really, and I'll just kind of, I'm going to use that, sorry, yes. So the first one is passion, and it's just about just being authentic to your idea, really. And I think, you know, if you're kind of thinking, oh, how can I get money, or how can I get a grant, that's maybe, you know, you need to stop and kind of start again. It's kind of like you've got an idea with your work, with the art, and it's kind of more about being authentic, really, and making sure that you're not just chasing the funding. So always stick to your idea, and I advise people to initially write a kind of 1-page proposal for yourself, kind of what is it that you want to do. So whether that's about you as an individual artist developing your practice, or whether it's a project. Think about what success will look like. You know, this is just really easy. You know, your 1-pager, where you are now and where you want to get to, which is a similar thing to what Jess was talking about in terms of developing your creative practice. I mean, it's really not rocket science, and no one's trying to trip you up. None of the funders are. They just need that real clarity And it's really important to have that kind of clear, sort of simple, because often these funders, I'm not sure Jess mentioned this, but there's often limited word count, and you've only got a small amount of space to write down what it is you want to do. And I think this thing about being authentic and clear and having that real kind of like almost one pager that you don't lose sight of is really important. And you know, thinking about that, getting from A to B, and how this project is going to help you on that journey. So just a kind of reminder really in terms of, you know, why you're asking for funding. It's always worth going back to that. Another thing that I say to people is the sooner you start on your budget, the easier it will be. Sometimes there's limits on funding, so that might curtail your budget, but also, you know, it can be a bit of a movable feast. But I think the budget and your narrative needs to tell the same story. It needs to marry up. So, you know, it's important, you know, you might not know exact figures, but when people have an idea, I always say, okay, let's do a wish list. Let's write down what you need for that project. And then, of course, you can trim it and get exact figures. And, you know, you might need quotes for certain things. But the sooner you start with the budget, I think the easier it will be to kind of identify what you need. It's like, okay, then to make this happen, we need £8,000. Well, then for a start, if you're applying to the Arts Council, you know to go for that under 15,000. So it's just really useful to kind of do that. Have at least a ballpark figure. And as I say, I always say to people, put down everything you want, because it's easier to take it away than it is, you know, you're halfway through a project and you've thought, oh, blimey, I didn't ask for this and we really need it. So get that all down in a budget. Where are we next? We're moving on to persuasion. So, and again, you know, this is exactly what Jess was talking about. This is another artist that I've supported with his work, just in the background there. But yeah, your persuasion is basically, you know, and this is to do with your preparation. Absolutely read the latest guidelines. Don't go back to a printed sheet that might be 3 years out of date. Go in on the website. The Arts Council refresh those guidelines all the time. I think there's some more, a refresh coming out very soon, actually. And things might change. There might be additional criteria. So always go in on the website, remind yourself what they're asking for. And I say, reflect back the language of the prompts. So if a funder is asking you for something specific, you know, use that language, you know, how do you demonstrate public benefit? Who is it aimed at? My project is aimed at, you know, reflect the language of the prompts back to them and use the prompts to persuade the funders how you meet their criteria. And again, you know, echoing what Jess said, absolutely do your research. There's so many useful case studies and examples on different funders' websites. And it's not just the Arts Council. Things like the Esme Fairbairn Foundation, they've now got a new strategy out. And I've just popped a link on this slide, actually, because I was quite interested in this one. They've kind of just got a new sort of chief exec and they've just relaunched. And it's really interesting what they're now funding and what their priorities are. And you go in on their website and it's just the chief exec talking about what's important to them. And these funders are really open, you know, they absolutely say, this is what we're going to do. This is what we want our money to go towards. So you're not left really in any doubt. So I definitely use those resources. There's really good videos. There's loads of Zoom links. You know, you can really get to these questions and answers. You can get to the bottom, like, is this funder right for me? So just a few kind of things that crop up when I'm kind of working with individual artists. And it's kind of like, I'm quite new to this. And obviously this is UK new artists. You might not have that kind of 20-year track record, you know, and often it's kind of like, you know, detail your experience. So one of the things I think is quite useful is like, you know, how do you start your funding journey? If you're new, how can you persuade a funder to invest in you if you've not really got a track record? And I think one of the things I'd say is be clear if there's a skills gap. You know, I think it's fine to say, you know, I haven't, you know, necessarily got all the kind of management criteria that's required, but I'm going to work with or be mentored by, or I'm going to work in partnership with another organisation. So, you know, it's kind of about coming up with solutions. And you can have a look through this slide really, and there's more I could say on that, but you know, there's always ways around questions. And I think about the scale of your ask as well. If it is a new project and you're piloting something, think about how much you're going to ask for, and build up your experience. And securing partners and collaborators. And I think as well, you know, anyone that can vouch for you. So if you can attach letters of support, or within an application, you can talk about who you've worked with. That's always really useful. Just checking on the time, we're getting a bit tight. So this is the final kind of couple of slides. I'm going to let you kind of read through these yourselves, and I think they are going to share the slides with you. But just my sort of top tips, and absolutely, like Jess said, read the guidelines, you know. There's often limited character word count. I can never say character count, word count. So be clear, be careful not to repeat yourself, be obvious, you know, use positive language. Don't kind of waste your time sort of saying, I might at some point do this, you know, I will do this. Be specific. You know, be clear. Don't say I've worked with numerous organisations, or, you know, it's like I've worked with 7 is better than kind of being vague. I'd say clarity, be specific. Always think about how. So if you answer a question, then say how you've done it. You know, I've got brilliant artistic quality. How have you? Demonstrate it. And a kind of final top tip there is to kind of give your proposal, whatever it's for, whether it's the Arts Council or, you know, one of the others I've mentioned, to somebody else who's perhaps not familiar with it. And is it clear? Let them read through it and perhaps say it back to you. Like, so you're asking for this, then you'll know that it's a clear application. So it's always worth kind of sharing it with someone. And I'll let you kind of read through and absorb those top tips. Persistence works. I think Jess mentioned as well that you can get feedback. It's an incredibly competitive out there at the minute for all funders. You know, everyone's inundated with really excellent applications. So don't get despondent. You know, it's a journey. Persistence does work. You know, do ask for feedback. And, you know, if you've got a really good idea and it's clear, you get the right advice and eventually you will crack it. So I kind of end on sort of the persistence works. And a final slide, as I'm rattling through it very quickly, is just about staying connected. And obviously you're part of UK New Artists, which is a great start, but there's absolutely loads of opportunities out there, loads of information, loads of people really wanting to help you. And it's, you know, just be a detective. If you want something funding, whether it's you as a creative individual or a project you want to work on, you know, look on Google, you know, be a detective, stay positive, look at all the different networks and talk to people as well. Listen to other people that have gone through funding programs or had applications accepted or rejected. You know, it's a really useful thing, really, just to kind of share like we are doing now and chat to people, you know, what's worked, what hasn't. So I'm going to end it there. Sorry about the technical difficulties in the middle. I hope that slightly threw me off my tracks, but I'll stop.
Cool, thank you very much, Tina. Do we have any questions for Tina? Any hands up? I'm just going to the gallery view so I can see if we've got any questions. My little head peeking through there. Morgan, did you see your face on that last screen? Yeah, did you catch sight of yourself? I saw you on that last picture. Yeah, yeah. Morgan took a little starring role in that last picture.
Yeah, just caught it there.
Okay, well, obviously, if you think of anything, we will have a little bit of time at the end. But I just want to thank both Tina and Jessica for sharing the kind of pathways, the opportunities and the funding streams which are out there for you to support your creative business. Now, next up, we're going to have a speaker who's going to tell you what you do with all that money that you've been awarded and how to manage it successfully and ensure that the government don't come a-knocking and that you make the kind of most of what you're doing. So I'm going to hand over to Mahmood Reza, who you'll see very shortly. Do you want to sit? That's all right. Yeah, you sit down. That's right. I can stand up. And Mahmood is from the accountancy firm Proactive Resolutions here in Leicester. And he also runs a really successful and interesting weekly podcast called I Hate Money. And I think, you know, while we all love it, we all hate it at the same time. But so he's going to run through kind of about being in self-employed creative and kind of how to manage that and that process. So welcome, Mahmood. And again, any questions at the end, or pop them in the chat. Okay. Thank you now.
Superb. Thank you very much, Michelle.
And we'll put on to speak. Oh, well, this is when we get the presentation up, of course. Okay. Yes, that would be a good start. She says, hey? Oh, yes, that's true. We'll just do that. Obviously adhering to social distancing here in our little bubble. And okay, hopefully thumbs up if everybody can see the presentation.
Superb.
Yeah, I think Anna was, thank you, Anna, I appreciate that. Okay, off we go.
Good afternoon, folks. What a fantastic two earlier speakers that we've had. My name is Mahmood. I'll introduce myself. I'm in my late 50s and I have a very good skincare regime, so I probably don't look that old. I am wearing a black hoodie with the motif Mahmood #1 Hero, which is a present from my wife, which I think she gave me slightly tongue in cheek. I run an accounting firm in Leicester. I've been very fortunate enough to work in the arts sector as a volunteer, a trustee and an advisor for about 40 years here. And I've worked internationally, nationally and domestically. And my title this afternoon, when I was asked to present this about running and funding your business, I've been slightly naughty and abridged it to call it running your successful creative business. And what I'm going to be doing is distilling all the things that I've learned from practitioners, artists, businesses that have been successful and maybe not as successful, and distill that into a three-pronged framework, which I'm going to talk about as we go through. If there are any articles or content that I make mention to, by the way, Michelle, UK New Artist, have very kindly said that I can share some links later on so you can tap into, do some bedtime reading with your Cupaholics or whatever, and actually digest them at your own leisure. So let's crack on. Now, when I've summed this up to present a framework here, I've used a financial acronym, APR, which sums up, in my opinion, the three key things, the three key ingredients that we need as a creative practice to be successful and to not only survive, but to be prosperous and to continue to be on them. What are these? What I'm going to be looking at is attitude. You might hear this called mindset. And I'm going to be talking about attitude in your business, both in terms of our relationship with money, how I feel that you should, as a creative practice, be in your relationship with money. I'm also talking about the attitude in terms of running your own business. For me, what you should try and avoid and what you should try and focus on in order to run something which can be very demanding, something that can be very emotionally sapping, something that can be very rewarding, and those things that we need to do as well. I make no excuse, by the way, for calling creative practices businesses, because we are all running businesses. The money motivation may be slightly different to that of a large commercial organisation, but we are businesses nevertheless. The next attribute I'm going to drill down is to talk about planning. For those of you who are doing funding applications, for those of you who may have done funding applications, you may see that plan as a means to an end, to produce that plan, to produce that budget for the Arts Council or whatever funding you go for. For me, I take a slightly different attitude to planning. And for me, it's important that creative businesses have a planning mindset, a planning approach to their business. And there's one financial plan that I'm going to emphasize that is absolutely critical to help relieve the anxiety, to help you make money in your practice, to actually deliver what you want to do. And therefore, we're going to drill down into that a bit more. The last factor that I'm going to comment on is about records. And I'm going to explain in my what you need to do. So this is actually keeping hold of what goes on, both financially and what else goes in your business. A lot of people will see this as a very tedious task, by the way, and they think it's an exercise that's carried out once a year. But I'm going to fundamentally show you, if you don't track what your customers are doing, if you don't track what you're spending, if you don't track where the money's coming from, if you don't track how you're engaging with your clients, your audiences here, then making decisions, deciding how you want to take your practice forward is going to be very, very difficult. You'll be relying on the worst office in the world, what's in between your ears. Relying on what's in your mind without having it documented is a road, to me, to potential disaster. So for me, it plays a very important part in that. Obviously, feel free as we go through. If there are questions that come up, there's no such thing as a silly question, by the way. All questions that need answering are valid questions. So let's carry on. Hopefully this works for me. If I get a bit enthusiastic by then, the speed by then, please do ask me to row back. Failing that, I shall continue. So for me, absolutely important. If you're just making your transition into the world of running your own creative practice, if you've been doing it for a few years, for me, it's the blend of the technical skills that you need, but also to have the right attitude and the mindset as to how you run your business. Now, in no particular order, as I'll take these things, always focus on your why. Now, many of us who go into business, we have a number of different reasons why we've gone into business. It could be we want to make a difference to somebody's life. It could be we wish to make a transformation. It could be that we wish to be more in control of our own destiny. It could be that we like to make our own decisions. It could be that we wish to make money. It could be that we wish to have flexibility. And remembering your why not only is critical in your funding applications, not only critical in your business plans, but it's critical when those moments come in your creative practice and you're feeling slightly out of sorts, you're feeling slightly despondent because you're not building up audiences as much as you wish to, things are not going quite right. Go back to your why, and it also helps you avoid the shiny bauble syndrome. So many creative practitioners, we get distracted by something that comes up. We think, oh, let's go for this new opportunity, and we can go off course. And we're therefore, what we're looking at doing, we forget our why, and we actually get distracted by things. We might be chasing the money, we might be doing things which seem very easy, and we avoid that. So always have in mind what your why is. Destination. Now, some of these elements, by the way, have been mentioned very beautifully by Jessica and Tina earlier. Your destination is your end goal. Where is it you wish to take your creative practice? So if you're a novelist, your end destination may be publishing that novel finally. If you're a theatre company, your destination, what are your key goals, whether it's audience development, whether it's actually making money, whether it's actually engaging, whether it's delivering new innovative works of art. So you must have an idea of your destination. The destination, by the way, which I'm going to deal with in a subsequent slide, helps us when we come to a route map from where we are at the moment to get to that end destination. Now, if I drill down a little bit more into the money, for me, really importantly, you've got to have what I call a healthy attitude towards money. Now, all of us have varying approaches and attitudes to money. Many of us don't wish to think of creative practice and money in the same breath, because that may not be the reason we're doing this. A money relationship is about knowing that money is there to actually deliver your why. Money is there to actually achieve your end destination. And if we look at money, it's about saying All creative practices, by the way, will go through an experience where they will invest time, they will invest energy, they will invest money in order to deliver whatever they're delivering. That money typically has to be spent today, and you may not get that money coming back into you until sometime into the future. If you do not look to actually recouping the money that you spent and actually making a surplus. Now, 40 years ago, when I first dipped my toe into the water of the arts world, the charity sector, if I'd mentioned profit to anybody, they would have probably thrown a brick in my direction, and profit was a very vulgar, a very dirty word. Now, what you do with that profit, that's certainly a different conversation. But your arts practice needs to make a return. It needs to recoup the money it's spending, but it needs to build up reserves. So making a profit should be a positive thing. Making a profit means you're here next week, the week after, next year, and you're there to continue delivering your why. A money relationship also means that if you're delivering work for a number of people, you need to be conscious of who you're invoicing. You need to be conscious of making sure that you have a good, robust system for making sure you get paid on time, making sure you pay yourself adequately. And it's to the credit of the Arts Council, by the way, that they have what I call benchmark rates for what they pay freelancers. And remember, you in your business are important. If you do not pay yourself adequately, what will happen eventually is you'll get despondent. Eventually, you'll get very demoralized, and you're looking after everybody else except yourself. You need to make sure your creative business rewards you for what you're doing, pays you, and pays you adequately. So remember your own role in that. And in terms of tools and techniques, by the way, I'll give you a couple. Most artists, in my experience, they don't like to have a direct conversation about money. So if they've done work for somebody and that person has not paid on time, they feel very uncomfortable about requesting that money to be paid on time. Here's a little tip for you. If you've got an email domain address, just set up a separate email address called accounts at whatever your practice is called. And when they're late, just send them a nice letter in your own language saying, according to our records, the invoice is outstanding. Or just say, my accountant told me I've got to actually be a bit more assertive in this direction, but do not delay on collecting that money that's owed to you. Make sure you're understanding how you price for your services. Make sure that you've got a good, positive relationship with money. Do not divorce yourself from that. And for me, there are two key numbers that all artists and creative practitioners and venues should focus on as what I call financial goals. Number focus, two key numbers. Money in the bank, i.e. cash. When you run out of cash, by the way, or access to cash, say goodbye to your creative business, you will not continue. And number two, the other important measure, the other important financial metric is making a profit or making a return out of what you do. And again, for me, there's nothing disheartening or negative about wanting to make a profit, because what you will be doing in making that profit is continuing going forward. And remember, your why, the reasons you're doing this, if you do not make surpluses, effectively, you're going backwards. And as a general point of view, in a former life, I used to sit on the Arts Council board many years ago, and Arts Council, generally speaking, as most funders do not like to continually fund organisations. They see grant funding, they do it, that's brilliant, but they see that also as risk funding there as well. And there's an expectation that creative businesses will not have grant funding as the only thing they're relying on. They'll be doing other things to develop collaborations, working with other artists, working with other business. And what I've told you, in my own business, I work with private businesses, I work with charities, and I work with creative businesses. Creative businesses are actually more suited to making money than private businesses because they've got the financial disciplines, they've got the understanding about budgeting, the understanding about value, and therefore you need to make sure you focus that on a metric as well. Now, just as an encapsulation, by the way, this feeds into your planning. The 6 steps, I would say, to actually how all businesses, creative businesses, make money. So first of all, you've got to identify who your end audience is. Who is the customer? Who is the person or the organisation that wishes to engage with you? However brilliant you are, by the way, however wonderful, however brilliant your novels are, not everybody will be interested in what you've got to offer. So who are your customers? It's what they call know your customer. Who is it? that is actually interested in what you've got to offer. Create that captivating meal. Obviously, I like food, by the way, so I'm going to use a food analogy as we go through this here. And what this means is, who is the person, who is the organisation, who is the individual that you're going to make a transformation on? Individuals and businesses that are your potential clients, your potential audiences, what they're interested in is what you can do for them. I know it sounds very selfish. Most clients, audiences are not really interested in you per se, but they're interested in what you can solve for them. They're interested in the transformations that you can make in their lives. They're interested in the differences that you can make. So that's what you need to do, is to make that offer for them that does that transformation. Now, this is, I'm not saying these things are easy, by the way, so please do not take this as me saying, get a list, do all these things, it happens. These are time consuming, they're energy sapping, they're rewarding, they're not without risk, and there's no guarantee that if you do this, you're going to make, you're going to have that business that you deserve there as well. But these, for me, are the things that you need to think in terms of. Connection is about messaging. It's about, once you know who your audience is, once you know who your clients are, you can understand the messaging that you need to do. You know where they hang out, you know things that resonate with them, and you then have to communicate with them. And I would say, by the way, it's not just social media. There are different ways to get a message to get in front of your end audience. And you could actually argue that social media sometimes is actually a way not to communicate necessarily, but however you do that, you need to get in front of them. Deliver great impact. So therefore, what you don't lose sight of what you're good at. You need to make sure that delivery is good, and you need to make sure that you, when you deliver, that you get some idea of getting that feedback. Now, a couple of other things just to tail on before we get to the meat of it. Most businesses, in my experience, will have a core offer. So have your core offer, but also have other opportunities that you're looking to develop. The core offer is the thing that gives you your bread and butter. And as you're looking there, you're looking at things to introduce to other people, other offers that you can make to them and develop accordingly. And then as time goes on, build your crowd. So in the world that we live at, if you've got a digital offer, great, you need to build up a digital audience. If you've got an in-person offer, a digital offer, you need to build up a client base over time. Now this, on this thing here, and I'm just going to put these all up here. Now, ironically, for a financial person, as an accountant, do not look at your business in terms of the money first. Make sure you've got your business story articulated well. So what's your end destination? Where are you? And how do you plan to get there? And typically your art story, by the way, is the end point, your goals, the route map as how you're actually going to make it happen. And that's what you can take from any funding application. If you're not doing a funding application, then you can just do it. How do you get from A to B? I would suggest you have milestones. So measure your progress as you go through. So if you're saying in 12 months' time, this is my outcome, your goal, how are you actually going to get there over the next 12 months? What are the milestones and measures in month 1, month 2, month 3? And then ultimately, from that story, translate that into the money. And the document that I would recommend that everybody does, whatever stage you are in your arts practice, by the way, you must do, and I say must with emphasis, you must do a cash flow story. Tell me what happens in your activities. What does that mean in terms of money coming in at certain times of the year? So if I'm doing a cash flow story from, say, the beginning of June up to the next May, what does that mean in terms of when the money comes into my bank account in April, May, June onwards? What does that mean in terms of outgoings? What am I spending on freelancers, materials? When does it happen? Once you know what that looks like, by the way, and in terms of tools, resources, I can supply those links to you, but think about your story and think about what does it mean in monetary terms? When does the money come in? When does the money go out? And what are those challenges that I have, those shortfalls in funding? When are those surpluses arising? Then you can make good decisions. You can decide to perhaps delay spending some money. You can decide to perhaps that the money you're expecting from your clients, you can do things to improve that. Once you've got your financial cash story in front of you, I promise you, you'll find it, A, it relieves any anxiety. B, you can identify the problems that may happen in the future, and you can do something about them now. do not create a reactive business. Create a business that you've got some idea about what that financial story looks like. Once you've got that, then you can make some really good, insightful decisions. And again, in terms of resources, tools, how you go about that, I can share those with UK New Artists at the end of this presentation, but it's saying, if you do nothing else at all, produce a cash story, a cash flow forecast, you might also hear it called out. If you don't do one, then I think you're reacting to your business as opposed to taking charge of it. So story first, numbers second. Translate the story into a financial. Now, probably not the most exciting thing to talk about. We spend money, we have money coming in, we have things that we carry on in your business. Make sure you've got good, robust records going on. Now, in terms of the records, most people will probably look at it. Records give you information. Records are vital. The data that you collect tells you things like, you know, how much things are costing you and what you're spending money on. It tells you where the money is coming from, which are your clients, with your audiences, where the actual money comes from, and if there's actually any value in doing that. Now, I'm not saying your business is purely just a profit-based business, but it may be that we have projects that we do, that we love, that we get a lot of enjoyment from, a lot of pleasure from, but actually the costs of delivering those projects, the resources required, are actually losing us money, and therefore there's a big strain. That might be something you have to fundraise for. There may be other projects that actually, they may not be particularly sexy, we may not particularly like them, but they actually bring in money, and actually the resources of those that we have to spend actually makes us more surplus. What that means is, where do we spend our energies? Because our time is limited. If you collaborate with people, if you want to develop new services, if you want to pivot, develop new projects, you need to understand the financial consequence of what you're doing. It doesn't mean that you should ignore them, but if you don't have that financial transparency, then it's very difficult to decide which direction to develop and take your business. There will be things that you're spending time and energy on that may not be the best for your business going forward. Business discipline. Keeping records for me actually injects a large amount of business discipline. So those businesses that say, typically, I've got all my receipts all over the place, and once a week on a Monday morning when things are relatively quiet, I'm going to sit down for half an hour and I'm just going to make sure I've documented what's going on in my business. You get a closer, healthier relationship with what's going on. And what that means is that if things are not going quite well, you can do something about them. Most people in my experience, by the way, only assemble their records probably once a year to keep to do their annual accounts. If you can get to a habit of doing more often, it's a good business discipline to get into. Now, just a pure giveaway here, it's obviously an obligation. So all creative businesses and businesses per se are under an obligation to keep adequate records. It may be, if you're going for large funding, by the way, it's very seldom that a funder, and Jessica and Tina can contradict me here, is not just interested in the quality of the work. That will sometimes speak for itself, but it's all about all the other elements that go to support that business. Because what a funder is saying is they're taking a risk decision. They're saying, as a public body, we are going to give you money. We're trusting you and investing in you, and we're taking a risk that the money is going to be used for what it should be. So therefore, obviously, yes, you need to make sure you can deliver the work, but do you have infrastructure, systems to make sure the money is well safeguarded? And having good infrastructure is a reinforcement of your credibility as well. So not only just obligations, it's a good business discipline, it gives you good information. Now, obviously the choice is, do you do this in paper format? So, you know, do you just make a note in a notebook, which is fine. I've seen it work. I, personally speaking, I'm not a big fan of paper records these days for a number of reasons. Number one, it's extracting the data that is very time consuming. So getting a calculator out, adding up lots of numbers may not be the best use of your time. The choice comes down to, do you keep things on a spreadsheet, and the spreadsheets, by the way, work perfectly well. But what that means is it's got to be maintained. And if you ever decide, if you've got more than one client, if you've got more than one product, more than one service, if you're spending money in different areas, Getting things like how much the project is costing you becomes very difficult to do. It's not impossible, but it's time consuming. My personal preference these days, and there are a number of applications that can do that at low cost, if anything, is to go digital. So there are a number of applications out there where you can connect them to your bank account. You can actually put all your receipts in there. You don't have to keep hordes of paper. My personal recommendation these days is a digital record system. Is great because it cuts down time. It's more efficient. You can extract the data much more easily, and you can actually get lots of quality information. You can find out where your money is going, what you're spending money on, and all those different areas that you do so likewise. And just as a throwaway comment, obviously it's much easier at the end of the year when you come to do your accounts for the regulator, for the tax office, or whoever. Getting that information assembled is much easier, and your life is less arduous as well. So summing up, everyone, attitude, make sure it's a good, healthy connection with money. Make sure it's a good, healthy connection in your business, and invest in yourself, by the way. You are the most important attribute in your business. So you need to make sure that your business looks after you. So take time off, look after your health and well-being. Because if you are not up to speed and you're feeling very overworked, then you're not going to be giving the best of yourself for your business. So you must make sure you look after that asset. Planning, absolutely key. So I'm not talking about a plan. If you're doing a plan for a funder, don't let it just gather dust. Dust it down and use it as a living, breathing document. Use that as your route map to how you get to where you are. And break it down into milestones. Measure your progress on a month-by-month basis. So how are you achieving your plan? If things don't go quite well, you've got time to put them right. Don't just put the plan and put it to one side. It's a living, breathing document there as well. Focus, and lastly, make sure that you've got good, adequate records. And a blend of all those three will give you a much stronger position to actually get to your creative success. And on that success, it's your success, by the way, not somebody else's measure of success. How are we doing for time, by the way, Michelle?
A couple more minutes, maybe.
That's fantastic.
Quick summary.
Yeah, now it's a quick summary. If you are interested in thinking, right, Mahmood, I want to understand how to put a cash flow together, I'll give a link at the end. I'll share that with Michelle. I've got a number of resources I can share. My podcast, I Hate Numbers, by the way, is actually not aimed at accounting people or numbers people. It's actually aimed at practitioners who want to learn a little bit more. They're bite-sized podcasts there. So there's plenty of free resources to actually tap into. What I would probably also say in terms of this idea of success, planning for me is it's like a goal without a plan is merely a wish. And what will happen is that you will never, well, you're not never is probably a bit absolute. Getting to your end destination, if you think anything in life that if you're planning a journey, going on holiday, going off to see friends, most of us would not just get in our car and hopefully we can find it by instinct. We get a route map, we get a map, we have some degree of planning our journey. Your business is exactly the same. And when I say take it seriously, it is just that. Now, I've been running my own business for 26 plus years. There's been times that I've made tremendous mistakes. There's been times when things haven't gone quite well. There's been times when I've thought I need to get a proper job and go and actually work for somebody else. There's also been times where it feels very rewarding, very prosperous. And over the years, having everything I'm talking to you about today, by the way, I've learned through, people say you don't make mistakes, but you do make mistakes. You make mistakes, you learn from that, you move on. But having that idea of clarity of purpose, having that idea about where you want to end up going, having the idea of keeping an eye on the money, having an idea of monitoring that cash flow, absolutely critical. If you do nothing else, have a cash flow, but use it as your accountability buddy. So each month that goes by, where did you think you would be? Where are you now? If it's not, and can I tell you, by the way, the moment you do a budget for anybody, the moment you finish it, it's wrong, it's out of date. It doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, but a budget gives you focus and a budget gives you clarity and a sense of direction and purpose. So all I would say is good luck with all that. I'm going to be around here if there's any questions that are coming in.
There are, yeah, we've got a couple.
Fantastic.
I'll just stop sharing so we can see everybody.
Let me just get
Yeah.
some, I'll get to the end of that. That's it. Contact details there. that stuff.
And obviously we're recording just as a reminder, so you know all of this can be kind of gotten there. So we did have a question from Jazz, who is currently receiving disability benefit, and was kind of interested to know what are maybe the challenges around setting up a business when you're receiving such a benefit. I hope I've translated that question for you. Okay, Jazz?
That's fine. I think you've got 2 or 3 issues there. So we've got some artists that got disabilities that we look after. So number one is just to check with there's the actual technical thing, checking with the benefits office that what you're allowed to do in terms of level of work before your benefits get affected by it. Number 2, in terms of actually the business itself, there's lots of support organisations, support mechanisms out there to help you support you on running a business. And I know many people who've run successful businesses who've got disabilities. So therefore there's the check with the DWP, check what you actually need, but all the disciplines that we've talked about are still with that as well.
Perfect. So if I can't see any other hands up or little signs, just going through the screens. That is a just incredibly good jaunt through the kind of the basics that you need to know about running a creative practice. I think the thing if people aren't aware of what a cash flow is, as Mahmood has said, he will share that. Obviously, I can help people kind of fill that in relevance to what they're kind of doing. Is there another question coming in, Laura? Did I just say?
It's about sharing details, and I'll send all
Oh
of
yes, yeah, so all the details will be shared, and obviously this will go on our website as well. Now, do we have any questions for Jessica from the Arts Council, from Mahmood, or for Tina? I know we've covered a huge amount today, but this is really fundamental stuff about ensuring that you set off your new practices and your new businesses in the best direction possible. No, you stay there. I'll sort of look around in the background. Maya.
It's not the question, it was just a clap.
Oh, hurrah. Okay, well, I can't see any other hands up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take Maya's lead, and I'm going to ask you, for those who would like to put their screens on, put your screens on and give a big kind of wave hands up to everybody who's taken the time to join us and share all their love and information with you today. It's really, really, important, and they want to be here because they value what you do and they want to see you succeed. So big clap to you for coming and attending, and I hope it's been useful. To all of those that UK artists, if you have any questions, reach out to us. We're always there to help you. And if you're new to us, same thing. All right, well, be good, everybody. It was a great session, and thanks to all of you again.